In the peaceful town of Riverstone, a mystery unfolds under the morning sun. A 91-year-old woman, Eleanor Ellie Harper, steps out of her weathered car. She faces down the notorious motorcycle gang, the Night Reapers. Who dares to challenge the rulers of the streets with nothing but fear? Ellie, with her silver hair and slow, deliberate gait, appears every bit the kindly neighborhood grandmother. Yet the Night Reapers, led by the ruthless Kane, have no idea they've just provoked a legend, a decorated Vietnam War helicopter pilot who saved hundreds of lives on the razor's edge between life and death. A single call from Ellie awakens the past. It summons the veterans who once owed her their lives. What began as a simple harassment at a local gas station turns Riverstone into a battleground of courage, redemption, and a secret that changes everything. Can one elderly woman truly defeat an entire gang? Or is there something even greater waiting in the wings? This story will grip you. Watch as bravery confronts fear and a town rediscovers its soul. Subscribe to our channel now. Join us for more compelling, unforgettable stories. At dawn's first light, soft sunbeams stretched across each cobblestone of tranquil Riverstone, a gentle warmth promising a new day. Slender rays filtered through leafy canopies, glittered on the silvery tin roofs of aged tile houses. They lingered on wildflowers nodding along the sidewalk. Amidst this serene tableau, Eleanor Ellie Harper, her face weathered by time yet still retaining a graceful poise, gently steered her vintage Buick toward Joe's gas station. For over 40 years, not one morning had passed without this ritual, so familiar it was like breathing life into the old main street. With practiced hands, she eased the car to a stop, the engine's purr subsiding as she pressed the brake at the familiar pump. Straight-backed, silver hair neatly pinned at her nape, she stepped out. A friendly smile blossomed on her lips. "Good morning, Tommy," she called to the young attendant polishing the windshield. Tommy, bright-eyed, hesitantly grinning, bowed in greeting. "Morning, Mrs. Harper. Would you like your car washed today?" Ellie's gaze paused on the logoed uniform. Her look was as warm as the first rays of sunshine. Peace hung in the air, broken only by the rhythmic clank of the pump and the cheerful chirping of sparrows in the branches above. Then, without warning, tranquility shattered under a roar of engines. Like a tempest unleashed, dozens of Shadow Viper motorcycles thundered into the lot, streaks of metal gleaming under the nascent sun. Leather-clad figures, helmets tough as armor, surged off their bikes, a living threat in full display. Amid the growling engines, Ellie calmly set down the pump. Her eyes followed the chrome-clad procession. Each rev deepened, vibrating the very air that had been so hushed moments before. Leading the Night Reapers, Kane strode down from his bike, bearing himself with brazen pride. His glare was a sharpened blade, his faded leather jacket patched with violent emblems that cowed any onlooker. As he paused beside Ellie's time-worn Buick, his gang echoed his sneer with mocking laughter. Kane curled a lip, half to himself. "Well, look who's out early today, Grandma." His lieutenants roared, phones raised to capture Ellie as if she were a sideshow attraction. In that swirl of exhaust smoke and gleam, Ellie stood resolute, no tremor in her voice as she inhaled deeply. Memories of hundreds of perilous rescue sorties in Vietnam flooded her mind. In that moment, she was no harmless grandmother. She was a legend, a helicopter pilot who had carved paths through hailstorms of enemy fire to save her comrades. When Kane jabbed a finger at the tarnished veteran's insignia on her license plate, taunting, "Medical granny or coffee server for soldiers?" Ellie's expression did not flicker. She simply shrugged and replied evenly, "I served my country, son. What have you done besides bully? Her unadorned words struck like a fireball at Kane's wounded pride. The lot fell silent. Engines fell into rasping hisses. Only the bikers' startled breaths filled the void. Before they could regroup, Kane yanked Ellie's arm in a show of force. Riverstone belongs to me now. Put that pump down, or... He let the threat trail off, eyes blazing, but Ellie only gave a soft laugh. In her elder eyes, a fierce light glowed. In that instant, she recalled the night in '68 when she'd plunged through a barrage of tracer rounds to pull Lieutenant John Steele Ramsey from a burning helicopter fuselage. He who was now the colonel commanding the strongest veteran corps in the state. Ellie retrieved her phone with determined fingers. Though age had slowed her hands, they were sure as steel. She did not call the police. She called Steele. Night still clung to the town, but every second pulsed with promise. The ringtone's chime bridged past and present, and as Kane's grip tightened once more, Ellie looked him dead in the eye and whispered, "You're making a grave mistake." In that brief sliver of time, Riverstone's sky shifted. The sunrise painted tile roofs gold, but here there was no room for fear or solitude any longer. At 91 years old, Ellie Harper had awakened a town with courage and honor. Her single call would bring the veterans rushing back, ready to teach the Night Reapers a lesson they'd never forget. Riverstone was no longer just Joe's gas station. It was the battleground of respect, loyalty, and unwavering spirit. The atmosphere at Joe's gas station suddenly turned stifling. Kane finally released his grip on Ellie Harper's car door. The Night Reaper's mocking laughter drowned out the rumble of the old Buick. The bikers swarmed her vehicle like sharks encircling prey. In that moment, no one dared utter a word, except for Tommy's rapid breaths, the young attendant slowly backing into the station, trembling as he dialed 911. But at 91, Ellie had seen enough of life's cruelties to know the police wouldn't arrive in time. So instead of waiting for outside aid, she calmly retrieved her phone from her coat pocket, her steady gaze fixed on Kane's smug face through the windshield. He assumed this frail grandmother was making a desperate, empty plea. But Ellie did not call the police. She called history. The phone rang once, then connected. On the other end came a deep, warm voice. "Ellie? Well, I didn't expect that." It was Steele Ramsey, once a lieutenant under her command in a life-and-death operation near Quang Tri in 1968. Now a colonel leading the state's most formidable veterans corps, a network bound by brotherhood and boundless gratitude. Ellie fell silent, allowing that voice a moment to still the storm raging in her mind. Under the morning sun, the Night Reapers had not yet sensed the shift unfolding before them. They saw only a grandmother dialing her phone. But Ellie stared straight at the black-leathered figure across the lot, her tone measured, yet commanding. "Steele, this is Ellie Harper. Remember that night in Quang Tri?" On the line, Steele sighed softly. "How could I ever forget? I owe my life to you." In that touch with the past, a hush fell. The bikers edged back, curiosity and unease flickering across their faces. They were accustomed to instilling fear, but never had they confronted a 91-year-old woman capable of stunning them so. When Ellie continued, her voice rang out like a command. "This morning, a gang at Joe's gas station needs a lesson in respect. The Night Reapers have it wrong. Riverstone is not your domain." The breeze stilled, a gentle warmth drifting through the lot. Some patched leather riders noticed the tarnished emblem on her license plate, a veteran's medal, the symbol of a heroine said to have saved lives amidst enemy fire. Kane, the ruthless leader, glared. His anger sparked, yet tempered by an unfamiliar doubt. From down the street, another engine roar. This one not the chaotic thunder of night reapers, but the synchronized hum of Steel Ramsey's veterans. More than 50 chrome-plated motorcycles glinted in the light, rolling in like a silver legion. They shouted no battle cries, brandished no weapons. Their silent presence alone made strangers' hearts pound. Kane sneered, ordering his men to retreat. "Get out of here, old woman, don't think you've won." Yet Ellie simply smiled, regarding her phone as the single ace she needed. The gang dispersed, leaving the pumps to reflect the morning glare. In an instant, Riverstone sank into an unusual quiet. Then, from the end of the avenue, the veterans advanced, no hurry, no ruckus, but with the authority of an unstoppable current. The lead bike halted. The rider lifted his helmet to reveal Steel Ramsey's silver hair. His sky-blue vest, adorned with unit patches, shimmered as though bearing the glow of past glories. He dismounted and strode toward Ellie with solemn dignity. The veterans split into two ranks, forming an honor guard along the pumps, clearing a path for the small figure of the elderly pilot. Their faces were weathered, their eyes afire with loyalty, ready to sacrifice for an ideal. Approaching Ellie, Steele's deep voice called out, "The Angel of Quang Tri," a nickname she'd never liked, for she saw herself as merely doing her duty. But in that moment, his words conveyed the depth of their gratitude. Ellie gave a slight bow, tears glistening in her eyes. Each look met hers with a silent story. Some bore bullet scars across their shoulders, others stooped by age, but all shared a bond forged in her courageous actions. When Steele took her hand, his gaze shone with both thanks and resolve. "Tell me everything, Ellie." Silence settled once more, broken only by wind whispering through leaves and the veterans' quiet breaths. Ellie surveyed the gathered crowd. Her voice, soft yet sharp as a command, rang out. "This morning, those bikers dared to threaten me on this street. They thought they could bully a 91-year-old. They didn't realize they'd crossed a living legend, not a frail elder." At her side, the silent operator's tap-tap on the communication console signaled the start of a well-rehearsed strategy. Fury flickered in the veterans' eyes, but their lips curved with gratitude. For last night, they dreamed of serving together once more. Deep in her chest, Ellie felt a renewal of spirit, an old flame fanned to life after years of dormancy. She knew the Night Reapers had sown chaos, but true strength lay not in roaring pipes, but in an unyielding spirit, bound by gratitude and communal unity. The once peaceful streets of Riverstone awoke anew. Under the blazing sun, more than 50 motorcycles sped off in all directions, yet still carried the unmistakable mark of authority. Ellie returned to the pump to finish her morning routine. Tommy, torn between shock and awe, watched with newfound respect. He looked up, his grin trembling. "Mrs. Harper, you really are a legend." Ellie simply nodded, her eyes sparkling with hope for the future. Riverstone had changed. Once again, history proved that respect, loyalty, and courage never fade. One simple call from a 91-year-old had roused the past, summoned battle-hardened warriors, and ignited a fight the Night Reapers could never win. Under the morning sun, Riverstone continued its tale of courage, a story that grips all who hear it. Night was falling on the town of Riverstone, a chill in the air, tension tightening like the moments before battle. Along the cobblestone streets, dim streetlights flickered on, casting soft pools of yellow light on the red brick facades of aged homes. No engines roared, no hurried footsteps echoed, only the gentle hum of gas pumps and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Inside a cozy Main Street house, 91-year-old Eleanor Ellie Harper sat at her living room table, a steaming cup of tea before her, its rising steam a silent comfort against the night air. Spread out on the table was a detailed map of Riverstone, every street, the market square, Joe's gas station, and Lucy's diner carefully marked. In the kitchen, Sarah Lynn, a Gulf War veteran turned intelligence specialist, watched multiple small security monitors mounted on the wall, each display relaying live feeds from cameras scattered across town. Calm but focused, she coordinated with the veteran patrol units via encrypted radio, confirming patrol routes, switching teams to battle-ready status. Though they had prepared for a counterstrike before, tonight's threat felt sharper, more perilous than any they'd faced. Suddenly the radio crackled, cutting through the quiet. Team 4 reports fire at Max Brewer's hardware store. Gasoline bombs discovered at Lucy's diner. The announcer's voice trembled, yet remained resolute. In Ellie's mind, a swirl of smoke and flames engulfing the northern block. Memories of destruction flashed behind her eyes, and she looked up sharply, steel in her gaze. "They've set fire to the businesses we built." Without hesitation, Ellie swept from her seat, strode to her old Buick idling outside, its engine humming like an old friend. Her silver hair billowed in the open window, her eyes still firm with determination honed by decades of service. Sarah rushed after her, voice urgent. "Ellie, don't be reckless, it's a trap." But Harper merely shook her head, her tone gentle but unwavering. "Sarah, these are my friends. I'm not backing down." They sped through the darkened streets and arrived at the town center within minutes. But they found not the comforting glow of street lamps nor the distant blare of sirens. Instead, chaos. Max Brewer's hardware store ablaze in a wall of orange flame, brick walls crumbling, blackened timbers glowing fiercely through the night. Max himself stood amid the wreckage, his life's work reduced to ashes, silver tears tracked down his weathered face. A few doors down, thick black smoke curled from Lucy's diner. Wooden chairs lay toppled after the surprise attack. Ellie's veteran team sprang into action, dousing flames with buckets of water, swinging fire extinguishers, working swiftly to contain the gasoline bombs before they could spread further. In that moment, a single minute's delay would have buried 4 decades of effort in ruin. Overhead, a federal task force helicopter droned in slow circles, and armored vehicles rumbled to a halt nearby. Sheriff Daniels, a former Marine, directed local deputies with icy composure behind dark sunglasses, coordinating with federal agents to gather clues. But the Night Reapers still held the tactical edge, striking simultaneously, overwhelming their opponents from the outset, leaving the defenders scrambling. When one rough-looking biker charged in, hurling a gasoline bomb into the midst of the veterans, the air filled with the hiss of igniting fumes. Instead of panicking, Steel Ramsey, the team's fighting heart, lunged forward, intercepting the attacker in an act of selfless bravery. His face creased with determination. He ground out through clenched teeth. "They know our patrol schedule. There's a mole in City Hall. Sarah, recheck all intel." Ellie nodded, ice in her stare. "They're not just destroying property, they're trying to break our spirit. But Riverstone is stronger than that." In the flickering firelight, the warmth of her conviction spread, igniting an unyielding will to stand firm. Again the radio crackled, reporting that the Night Reapers had stormed the Veterans Center, this time armed. The announcer's tone shifted into an alarmed cadence. "Warning! Heavily armed bikers are attacking the care facility." That place was no mere building. It was a sanctuary for wounded souls, a refuge healing the invisible scars of war. Ellie would not allow Steele to charge into that inferno. It's a trap. They want us to react in anger, to make mistakes, to lose lives. She turned to the assembled townspeople, veterans and their families. Her voice rang out across the chaos. Cain thinks fire will extinguish us, but fire forges steel. It cannot destroy our spirit. Silence fell. Then Max Brewer stepped forward, voice quivering. What do we do now? Let them burn it all down? Ellie offered a steady smile, faith shining in her eyes. We'll show them Riverstone never surrenders. When violence strikes, we push back with willpower. At that instant, street lamps flickered back on across the square, and the distant roar of motorcycles echoed in the streets. They had returned, more than 40 veterans, some grizzled comrades who had fought by Ellie's side, others younger veterans she had mentored. Their leather vests shone with military patches, each insignia telling stories of valor and camaraderie. Immediately they divided into teams, moving with military precision around the care center. Some set up mobile barricades to seal off back alleys. Others stood by to neutralize any remaining threats with fire extinguishers. Dozens of water canisters lined the main thoroughfares. The discipline and coordination was unmistakable, each face reflecting steadfast determination. In the town square, federal agents and local law enforcement erected a secure perimeter. Under the glare of floodlights, the image of a 91-year-old grandmother standing tall, eyes ablaze with defiance, became the emblem of unbreakable resolve. Townspeople gathered, whipped out their phones to record the scene. Hashtags like #StandWithRiverstone began to trend online. A collective spirit surged like an unstoppable flame. Within minutes, the bikers panicked. There was no one left to intimidate. Standing before them were seasoned fighters wielding fire hoses and unwavering courage. Steele approached Ellie, quietly placing a hand on her shoulder, pride evident in his gaze. They never realized how strong Riverstone could be. The Night Reapers scattered in disarray, their threats dissolved in the face of unity. Lucy's diner had survived. Max's hardware store was largely intact. Only wisps of smoke drifted from the roofs. As dawn crept in, the veterans' convoy withdrew, leaving Riverstone restored to calm, though transformed forever. Countless nights of fear and countless hours of planning culminated in this moment. Fire was not a tool of annihilation, but a test of spirit. Ellie Harper, on the brink of a century, had rallied a community out of darkness, proving that courage and solidarity are the mightiest weapons. As the morning sun rose over Riverstone, the town awakened anew, ready to face any challenge because its soul had been rekindled and would never be extinguished. Dawn climbed higher. Morning light spread through the streets of Riverstone, revealing moss-grown rooftops and age-worn cracks in the brick walls. In the central square, the community center, normally reserved for local gatherings, was packed to the brim. Hundreds of steely faces of veterans, a kaleidoscope of local business owners, and hopeful eyes of longtime residents, all assembled together. The air was thick with solemn anticipation, as if the entire town held its breath, awaiting a moment that would mark history. Upon the simple wooden stage stood a large map detailing the Night Reapers' positions, the gang responsible for months of terror, surprise attacks, and sabotage. Floodlights cast a soft glow around Eleanor. Ellie Harper's face. At 91, she looked fragile, yet her eyes burned with iron resolve. She stepped forward, fingertips brushing the map, a silent assertion of her responsibility to lead the community through this trial. "One day ago," she began, voice low yet resonant, "we witnessed the enemy's power. They stormed our streets. They planted gasoline bombs outside Lucy's diner. They set fire to Max Brewer's hardware store. They thought Riverstone was easy prey. She paused. Her gaze swept across the crowd. But today, we will show them our true strength. In that instant, the audience erupted, polite applause crashing into flutters of paper, iPhone flashes lighting eager faces ready to capture this historic moment. From the back row, Max Brewer, whose hardware store had burned just nights before, stood, fists clenched, bitterness and anger etched on his face. They have weapons. They're numerous. And there's a mole in City Hall. How can we possibly win? Before he could finish, Ellie smiled with unwavering faith. Strength isn't about inflicting pain. It's about withstanding it and still fighting. Max's anger evaporated, replaced by a spark of hope. Steele Ramsey, once the lieutenant under her command in Quang Tri, now a colonel leading the state's strongest veterans corps, stepped up beside Ellie with a crucial announcement. The veterans had pooled resources to purchase and refurbish the old factory on the town's east side, transforming it into their command center. The crumbling gray walls had been repainted. A new iron gate bore the American flag. Moments later, Sarah Lynn, senior intelligence officer, strode onto the stage, hoisting a thick dossier overhead. She unveiled the Community Recovery Fund, established by veterans and supported by local businesses, enough to rebuild every damaged enterprise. Detailed reports on repair costs, workforce requirements, and projected timelines fell upon the audience like a revelation. Silence reigned for a heartbeat, then gave way to triumphant cheers. Ellie pointed to the map behind her, where aggressive red lines marked the Night Reaper's invasion routes. Her voice steadied. They control the town's entry points, but their forces are scattered, uncoordinated. We will reclaim each street, secure every intersection. We will divide into 3 teams: business protection, night patrol, and mole monitoring. Every neighborhood is a fortress, every resident a soldier. Her words ignited renewed vigor. Lucy, the Main Street diner owner who had narrowly escaped a bombing, rose, voice trembling with emotion. "What are we waiting for? My diner needs repairs. I want to reopen tonight." The hall thundered with applause. Eyes glistened with tears. At that moment, veterans and townspeople from surrounding streets converged, armed with lumber, paint, fire extinguishers, and construction tools. One group installed new security cameras, another reinforced shop windows and doorways. The old factory buzzed with activity, its screens displaying live feeds of hotspots. Under Sarah's coordination, every action felt like a miniature military operation. No chaos, only discipline and determination. Far off, the Night Reapers still lurked. Federal drones observed ragged bikers prowling the northern sector. But as they edged closer, veterans' headlights flared, blocking each path. They realized too late. This town was no longer defenseless. Radio channels crackled. Unit 2 moving in Old Mill District. Windows secured at Pine and 2nd. Mole positions under surveillance. Information streamed into the command center, piecing together the full tactical picture. On stage, Ellie leaned on the map, her eyes bright with unshakable conviction. She inhaled deeply, exhaled, then spoke with unwavering resolve. "Let them see. Riverstone will not break. When we suffer, we rise. When we lose, we rebuild. When we fear, we stand together." A sudden breeze rustled under the streetlights, casting palm leaf shadows on the pavement. The townspeople realized, for the first time in months, they were no longer hunted. They were the power, the spirit of unity, warriors forged by adversity. Yet Ellie understood. This initial victory was but a beginning. When darkness fell again, The Night Reapers would return, stronger, more desperate. Her smile faded into a solemn look. She turned to Steele, her voice quiet but firm. Next time, they will target me. That will be our opportunity, but it may cost me my life. Steele bowed his head, conflict and dedication mixing in his expression. Sarah moved closer, placing a reassuring hand on Ellie's shoulder. We will be ready, Mrs. Harper. Silence descended over the community center. Across town, alarm sirens blended with the hum of volunteers wielding tools, the click of wrenches and the rasp of sandpaper, a symphony of restoration. Riverstone was awakening, not merely to survive, but to prove that when a community stands united, even the deepest darkness cannot drown out the light of solidarity. Under the pale moon, leather and denim-clad silhouettes were no longer alone. They had chosen to stand, to fight not just for homes, but for the indomitable soul of the town. And at the red brick house at Main and 4th, Eleanor Harper, silver-haired, 91 years young, smiled in quiet satisfaction. For she knew true strength lay in every breath of Riverstone. A week passed. Riverstone felt like a spring stretched to its breaking point. The peace that once defined this town had become a distant memory, replaced by constant alarm. The abandoned mill buildings on the outskirts, once monuments to a thriving textile industry, had been fortified into strongholds by the Night Reapers, reinforced now with professional mercenaries under Marshall's command. Atop the old factory on the hill, where the veterans had set up a temporary command post, Ellie Harper and Sarah Lynn sat before twin security monitors, their eyes tracing every calculated move of the enemy. Beside the console, the radio's sharp burst of static cut through the tension. A large shipment was gathering at the safe house in the north. Military-grade explosives were stockpiled, ready to detonate. In that instant, Ellie felt a chill. Kane was no longer content with dominion. He intended complete destruction. Her gaze flicked across the map on screen, assembling fragmented intel into a coherent battle plan. Sarah tapped rapidly on the keyboard, her face stern as she cross-checked coordinates from multiple intelligence feeds. The once peaceful map of Riverstone now pulsed like a living defense grid, stretching from historic lanes to shadowed back alleys. Just then, Max Brewer, sweaty from battling flames at his hardware store just the night before, burst through the door, panic etched across his face. He and his wife had received an offer to buy their store for triple its value, coupled with a promise of absolute silence and safety. Max's shock was raw as he recounted their willingness to pay any price to erase his life's work. Ellie merely nodded, her voice calm but firm. They're not buying your store. They're buying our silence. Her words struck like a blade against the veteran shopkeeper's pride. Before he could steady himself, the radio crackled again. A convoy of trucks was advancing from the south. These were not Night Reapers' bikes. They rolled in precise formation, as if guided by seasoned commanders. Through a pole-mounted security camera, Ellie spied a black SUV weaving through the alleys, an armored siege force closing in. She remarked coldly, "Kane's called in heavy reinforcements. He's losing control." It was more than wounded ego. It was fear dawning on him, realizing Ellie and her allies had turned the tables. Meanwhile, at the Reapers' makeshift warehouse, Kane raged against Marshall. The clang of metal doors echoed through their PA system. Marshall laid down a strict 48-hour ultimatum: surrender or we clean house by our own means. Kane, incandescent with fury, thundered that this was not just business, but a matter of respect. Respect for his territory, his power. Marshall's reply was ice cold. To him, This was mere protocol, and Ellie, that hateful old lady, was the threat to be neutralized. Back at the old mill, Ellie convened an emergency briefing under flickering fluorescent lights. The hollowed chimneys cast long shadows across the assembly of battle-hardened veterans. Many had faced death's door, and they formed a tight circle, hanging on her every word. "Mercenaries have changed the game," she began. "They don't care about small-town squabbles. They came to start a real war." Faces hardened. Some veterans breathed out memories of lost comrades, wounds still aching. Steele Ramsey, her former lieutenant in Quang Tri, now colonel of their forces, urged a direct assault. His voice was measured, resolute. "We could strike with surprise, split into platoons, ambush them at the west ramparts." But Ellie cut him off with a shake of her head. "That's exactly what they want, to force us into an all-out fight. This time, we let them think they have won, then lure them into our trap." Her mind raced back to those Vietnam sorties, when she led helicopter crews through enemy fire to rescue her men. Sarah interjected, concern etched in her features. "This is too dangerous. They'll kill you if they catch you." Ellie merely nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "I survived sniper nests in Quang Tri. I know how to play risky when the stakes demand it." It was no boast. It was a declaration of expertise honed by decades of conflict. Night deepened. The veteran unit, over 40 strong, prepared to withdraw from their fortified positions. Their attire, leather vests, veteran insignia, helmets scarred by battle, masked a strategic ploy. Ellie stepped outside the mill alone, striding down familiar streets toward Lucy's diner. From the control room, Sarah's voice crackled through. "Marshall's on to us. He suspects because our target moved too easily." Indeed, that black SUV loomed just around each corner, poised to strike. Lucy's diner, still scarred by the gasoline bomb attack, loomed in the gloom, its battered sign swaying in the breeze. Inside, Ellie mounted a small platform by the neon sign's dim glow. A silver-haired figure in a simple sweater, a century-seasoned aviator ready for one final sortie. She scanned the alley once used by the Reapers. Unknown to them, every move was recorded, via hidden veteran cameras, shopkeepers' cell phones, Sarah's encrypted radio. When Marshall gave the midnight assault order, Ellie timed each heartbeat, each second ticking toward fate. She tapped her concealed radio, voice low. "Let them come. The trap is set." Her legendary strategy echoed through the night. Bait the enemy into the kill zone, encircle them, then strike with coordinated precision. One by one, veteran headlights blinked on, marking positions like guiding stars, proof that patience and planning trump brute force. On every empty avenue, silent sentinels emerged, veterans moving without shout or gunshot, coordinating with federal agents to block escape routes and protect civilians. When that black SUV finally rolled into the ambush, headlights cut out, flashlights snapped on. Marshall's crew found themselves trapped, loaded pistols useless against disciplined veterans led by a 91-year-old ex-pilot who once soared amid raindrops of danger. That night's sky over Riverstone shed its cloak of darkness. Patrol lights, federal vehicles, helmet cams painted a vivid tableau of solidarity. Ellie stood still at the center, feeling the enemy engines die down. The bikers dropped their weapons in stunned surrender. Police sirens swelled in triumph. Around her, weary but proud veterans realized each move they made was a step toward Riverstone's salvation. As dawn's light spilled across the rooftops, Riverstone found peace again. but this time fortified by strength. Those decaying factories no longer shielded criminals. They symbolized a renewed promise of recovery. Ellie Harper, silver hair catching the morning breeze, smiled softly, knowing the real battlefield wasn't the street corners, but the hearts of her neighbors. And when the sun rose after that long night, Riverstone awoke as a united community, ready to meet any challenge, as warriors who never back down. Night fell over Riverstone in complete silence. Every street lamp and porch light flipped off in unison, plunging the town into darkness. Only the faint glow of backup generators at major businesses cut through the blackness. In an instant, a wave of headlights from veterans' motorcycles pierced the night, strobes of silver slicing through every alleyway, every roofline, pinpointing the mercenaries led by Marshall as they cowered in their hiding spots. Marshall's radio crackled with panic. "We've been exposed!" His harsh shout echoed through the still air, followed by the clang of hurried movements as mercenaries scrambled to reposition. But before them, the veterans emerged like specters, leather-clad figures gliding from shadows in perfect unison, moving with the precision of a specially trained unit. No boisterous shouts, only nods on command as they swept the area, leaving no biker unaccounted for. Above them, a DEA helicopter roared overhead, its spotlight forming a tightening ring around the Night Reaper's safe house. From its underbelly, tactical teams rappelled down, and under the veterans' floodlights, SWAT officers and federal agents stormed the corrugated iron shutters, the only exits sealed tight for days. Amidst this swirling storm of action, Lucy's diner glowed softly. Its front window framed a solitary figure. Ellie Harper, calm as ever, stood facing Marshall through the glass. No threats hurled, no orders bellowed, just a slight tilt of her head and a touch of irony in her gaze. She had orchestrated this outcome with meticulous care, not mere courtesy. Marshall, weary and tinged with respect, paused, then conceded. She had anticipated every move, led them to this very moment. That admission alone revealed the truth. Against a strategist, weapons meant little compared to cunning. Yet the night's violence had one final crescendo. In the Night Reaper's fortified warehouse, Kane, the ruthless leader, frantically loaded military-grade explosives onto a heavy-duty truck. His aim was not to seize the town, but to obliterate it. Around him, long-time lieutenants, once fiercely loyal, stood stunned, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. Ryder, perhaps the truest of Kane's followers, suddenly grasped the horror of their course. In a moment of agonized clarity, he turned his weapon on Kane's arm. The bullet forced the detonation device from Kane's grasp, which slid across the concrete floor. A single muffled explosion echoed as federal agents and SWAT teams swarmed the warehouse, subduing each thug before the bombs could detonate. As the night's terror faded, dawn's first rays breathed new life into Riverstone's streets. Ellie, wrapped in a cozy sweater, sat at the counter in Lucy's diner, watching a surreal sight. Former Night Reapers now wearing crisp leather vests stamped "Veteran." They gathered debris, wiped soot from walls, swept the sidewalks. A breathtaking new beginning. Ryder approached Ellie with head bowed, voice trembling with remorse for the path he had walked. Ellie simply smiled, her warm gaze offering forgiveness and the promise of a fresh start. Meanwhile, Marshall, gaunt behind prison bars, received word of this transformation. He had gambled his honor by supporting the Reapers, yet in the ruin of his scheme, camaraderie bloomed anew. He penned an application to join the veterans after his sentence. He wished to use his military experience, his discipline, to defend the community, not terrorize it. When he came to visit at Lucy's, he bowed before Ellie with heartfelt sincerity. "If I truly grasp the value of fighting for the community, I ask to join your ranks." Ellie offered a bittersweet nod. "If you understand why we fight for our community, then welcome aboard." 1 year later, under a bright summer sky, all of Riverstone gathered in the central square for the dedication of the Strength in Unity Memorial. A sturdy granite pillar bore the inscription, "No one stands alone." Below, hundreds, veterans, townspeople, business owners, and even Kane's brother, newly released from prison at Ellie's invitation, stood in attendance, the younger man clad in a fresh vest, his face a mix of gratitude and resolve. Ellie stood alongside Steele Ramsey. The setting sun gilded her white hair in a halo of gold. She turned to her old comrade, voice rich with warmth. "Victory is not about defeating the enemy. It's about guiding them into the light." A thunderous ovation swept the square as motorcycles' headlights flickered on, marking Riverstone's new chapter. Not just a town once under siege, but a beacon of hope for every community. Proof that even the deepest darkness can be redeemed through courage, forgiveness, and the power of unity. Leave your comments below. Share these powerful stories with your family and friends across America.